Welcome to another episode of the Swords and Sports Podcast. One man's journey to read 52 fantasy books in 52 weeks and create 52 podcasts documenting the experience. I'm your host, Mike Mogues, and this week I am so excited because I am joined by Hugo award-winning author Jeannette Ng to talk about her book, Under the Pendulum Sun. That interview is, of course, coming up after the book details. As a quick self-promo, you can find this podcast on all your podcast listening platforms, including Spotify and Apple. And if you are so inclined to see the man behind the mic, you can follow the YouTube channel. It is also at Swords and Sports. And as a bonus treat, since it's the Halloween episode, you could see me in a spaceman suit. If you didn't think I was going to address it, I kind of felt like I had to. For all details about upcoming episodes, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The handle is at Swords and Sports. It's all at Swords and Sports, everywhere. Sometimes I say it in my sleep. Let's get into these book details. The book is Under the Pendulum Sun. The author is Jeannette Ng. It is 409 pages in the paperback edition. It was published on October 3rd, 2017. Oh man, we almost hit the anniversary for it. But we didn't, so there it is. And I think I said the publisher is Angry Robot, which is slowly becoming one of my favorite publishers. And I thought that this book would be perfect for Halloween if anybody's read it. It's not exactly like a Halloween gothic book, but it does have some of those elements, and it's fun. What award did this book win? The British Fantasy Award for Best Newcomer. It's like the Sidney J. Bounds Award or something. As a warning, this podcast contains spoilers for the following book, Under the Pendulum Sun by Jeannette Ng. I am so excited for everybody to hear this, so without further ado, here comes the interview. I am so excited to bring on an author who has too many awards to say in this introduction. It's Jeannette Ng, author of The Pendulum Sun. Welcome to the show.
Hello. I'm honored to be here.
That sounded questioning, and I like that. It is a question. Is it an honor to be here? Nobody is sure. Are you the first ever underground costume salesman?
I don't think so. I mean, it's not technically underground. I sold it out of my garage, which is very above ground, and I don't do that anymore. It's not very profitable.
What do the profit margins look like on that?
Terrible. I mean, it was very janky. I mean, I used to put. I get costumes, shove them in my suitcase, bring them back when I was visiting my parents in Hong Kong and things like that. It's all very silly. But I enjoyed those were good times. Wrote a lot of bullshitty articles about aesthetics on my blog to try and convince people I knew what I was talking about when I talked about costumes. And it lives on in overly elaborate descriptions of clothing and my work.
Yeah, definitely. Here in the United States, we've got like a Halloween store called Spirit Halloween that just like takes over abandoned buildings for 3 months. You're like the neighborhood Spirit Halloween.
I sincerely doubt it is anywhere that exciting. I do occasionally still have my friends who go, hey, I'm going to go to like a Ren Fair themed wedding. Can I come borrow/take some clothes away? And I'm like, yes, take them away from my garage. Because I have old stock and I'm still constantly trying to get rid of it. And so I equipped a couple of friends who are going to a Ren Fair themed wedding and begging them to take away more clothes. You could wear this incredibly fashionable bright red military jacket on a daily basis. And he was like, no, my entire wardrobe is brown, so I can't. It's too exciting. And I'm like, oh.
Well, look at that. You're trying to bring joy in people's lives. This person was going to have, just a boring old wardrobe. And you're like, look, I could change your whole life with this red military costume jacket.
I suppose costume versus clothes is a dichotomy I think about a lot because, like what makes a costume like that kind of unreality of costume, the idea that you can't live in it versus clothes. And I always get very excited when I LARP, yes, to my eternal shame and I'm under the impression that younger nerds these days think LARPing might be cool, but I'm sorry to disillusion you. It is the least cool thing in the universe. But it's a lot of fun. And I love running around in costume. And I think one of the most exciting things for me playing a character, because, you know, our live role play events, they go on for all weekend, sometimes a long weekend. So you're practically sleeping in your costume and you want to have a change of clothes. And what gets very exciting is when you hit the point of having accumulated clothes, bits of costume, that your character kind of has a wardrobe and you're wearing kind of different tunics with different skirts or whatever. And it becomes this extension of the character. And it, you know, it's very spoiled, you know, there's quite a lot of bits of clothes and but you know, you can end up playing a character for almost a decade, and betraying how old I am. But that moment when it's not just, you know, you're not just the comic book character who always wears the red t-shirt, and you're not like you know that old sitcom joke where someone opens their wardrobe and they have like 10 copies of the same blazer.
Yeah.
But when you kind of suddenly your character feels more real, and that really excites me. Like when costume kind of tips over into clothing, when you kind of have the moment of like, oh, it's cold and raining, so I'm gonna wear all 3 of my dresses on top of each other.
That's a smart move.
I know sounds chaotic, but that's kind of when it becomes fun. And you can sometimes see it in movies like Disney's Beauty and the Beast, the recent one with Emma Watson. There are many things wrong with that film, which I won't go into, but the costuming in it, specifically when Belle was in the village, she wears the same kind of few layers, but she mixes it up. So like one scene, her apron like is pulled up, and the other scene, like her bodice isn't done, and she's wearing the same clothes, but like slightly reconfigured. And that's exciting because it suddenly feels like, oh yes, they're clothes. Because sometimes you wear your hoodie zipped up, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you've got it tied around your waist, but it's the same piece of clothing. Like hoods and chaperons.
If you weren't sure about Jeanette's costume expertise,
oh, sorry.
Now you definitely are.
You cut all of that. None of that's exciting. Let's talk about
what do you
else.
mean?
Literally anything else.
That was awesome. I learned something, and let me tell you, I've never thought about it. I guess I'm thinking the difference between costume and regular clothing is just a matter of perspective. If you think it's regular, then it's regular.
I mean, yes, absolutely. There is that. There's just, you can wear whatever you want, wear what makes you happy. Just I think it's that feeling where you're no longer wearing something for show, where it's not like you can live in these clothes, like you look like you could fall asleep in them. They're just, you can exist in them. Like I think that sense of reality, verisimilitude, which to be fair isn't the same as actual reality, because the believability of something, I mean, every single author on earth has made this joke 20,000 times of like, yes, all these plots that reality are throwing us, if I put this in a book, no one would believe me. Like everyone's made that joke. So what is believable and what is real? And you know, there are real people out there who do wear a red t-shirt every single day of their life and has 20 red t-shirts. Tom Scott on YouTube, you know, we have all watched him unbox like his like wholesale quantities of red t-shirts. So, you know, like people like that are real, just not necessarily believable.
That's true. That's when it gets the most interesting. So in your author story, you go from, you know, garage costume salesperson to award-winning author. What a dramatic leap that was. How did it feel to deliver such a fire speech for your award that they changed the name of it?
I don't like taking credit for that. I know it's kind of in the mythology now, but
yeah, you're a legend for it.
A lot of wheels were turning behind the scenes about that. You know, people have been criticizing Campbell for years. I mean, if you go on his Wikipedia page, you can find 500,000 people over the last, few decades just coming out going like, this man's a bit of a fascist, in prominent SFF columns, and obviously the book Astounding, the biography of him and his various other luminaries of the time came out recently. So there's a lot of stuff was kind of building to the point where I came along and made a fancy speech. But I wrote my speech basically like I was sitting in the audience going, I'm not going to win this, but I should probably write a speech. And D, like three seats along, was like, you should probably write a speech because you'll be so embarrassed if you didn't. And I'm like, so I pulled up my phone and wrote a speech then.
Wait, what?
That's about it. Yeah, that's really it.
You came up with a
it.
speech while you were sitting there?
Yeah, I mean, I've told the story before, and I meant it almost. I meant it almost as a joke. Like I know a lot of people see like fire and brimstone, and I don't want to say there isn't fire and brimstone, but I feel like it was almost, joke is the wrong word, but it's that kind of thing where you say a thing and you just kind of think, we all know this, you all know this, and it's not going to change, but I'm just going to point it out because, hey, I mean, I live in the UK. I mean, this is a soggy, terrible island of. I love it, but it's also terrible in many ways, and you can. There's only so much power saying what's obvious can do, and I didn't think it changed anything. I just thought, hey, I'm just gonna go up there and tell you because we all know, right?
But you were wrong.
And yeah, no, that was heartening. That was genuinely heartening. And yeah, did we need to explain what happened to the audience?
No, we don't need to explain that. Everybody can go check that out on YouTube. It's awesome. It's super fun. I watched it like 7 times. I was like, damn. As someone who perpetually lives in fear, I would never go do that, but I certainly applaud you. Did some small part of you think they're going to change the name of the award to my name?
No, not really. I really didn't even think they would do it. But, afterwards, I talked to a bunch of people. Like, people came up to me afterwards being like, oh, we've been trying to change the name of the award for years. Thank you. And the one guy was saying to me, oh, we've been trying to do this for years and years and years. And everyone's lost interest and no one's interested in me. And then just like in the past 5 minutes, like I've gotten like 10 DMs from people. So like, I feel like I definitely reinvigorated the movement, but I was not the person writing the petitions. Like afterwards, I think a lot of the other Campbell winners wrote started writing emails and petitions and things. And I was, I cared, but I felt like, oh, I've lit the fire now. I'm lazy. I don't.
Lazy? You went up there and you just started going, fuck this. I like it.
I'd like to think I was more polite than that, but I do believe I swore. So
you did swear, just and then they gave you an award for it.
Yes, they did. They did. Which, like, to a certain extent, they were also giving the award to themselves for having made the change. So it's a little I think it's a little self-congratulatory on every level, but I wasn't going to say no.
Though. Yeah,
no to a very nice statue.
I've never heard of someone winning an award for winning an award. That is truly a first.
I believe there was precedent. I believe it did go to the council of people who decide these things, and there is precedent for award speeches being nominated for best other. I mean, best other is the box of everything. I mean, AO3 won the year before, like Archive of Our Own, so anything can win.
Ooh, shots fired.
No, like just like I didn't mean it in a bad way. Just
I know, but I took it as that because it's fun.
I mean, yes, sure, shade, but no, I have a deep love of AO3. Just it definitely is pushing the definitions of other at that point.
Right.
And as we continue to, I think best other like video essays almost seems passe.
Okay.
But that is itself like a big achievement too, like video essays being included, and that is a lot of discourse happens on video essays these days, for better or for worse.
And this will be the last question I have about this, because do you think can you teach me how to do whatever you did with your hair where it was flapping up and down? It was awesome.
That wasn't my hair, it was a hat.
That looked like your hair. Can I have
I'm
that
afraid
hat?
it was my hat. It's I can go get it. It'll take me 5 minutes, but it's
Oh,
it's a
we don't have
peacock
to do that.
hat.
What? That thing was sweet.
Yeah, it was kind of falling apart. A friend of mine made it, so it has like a tail and it's like
So
a
it was a
little peacock
custom?
sculpture. So it's like a pulley system. Like it's a little like there's a little pulley that comes out of the beak of the bird's mouth, and the tail of it goes up. I can there's a video of it on YouTube, not YouTube,
Okay.
on Twitter, where I was asking people if I should wear the hat. But it's a hat. I did get Mary Robinette Cowell's help with fixing the hat.
Okay.
I ran up to her in a sort of like I need your puppetry skills. Stat, it's a puppetry emergency. Which I think she enjoyed. She wears a lot of hats, and I'm constantly impressed by every single hat she wears, but I don't think she gets to use her puppetry hat at a sci-fi convention very often. So
there you go. Look at that. If you're gonna do it, you might as well bring the experts in.
Well, it's basically it's a very it's like a friend of mine made it. It was slightly falling apart by the time I was wearing it. So
Were you concerned about flying away?
No, but I did have to travel in it with it on my lap in like in a Tupperware box. So
I don't know. Imagine what people thought was in that.
well, every now and again, like when people are like, "Oh my god, it's a bird! Is it real?" It's like, no, obviously, it's made of paper mache.
Because everybody keeps their real birds trapped in a Tupperware, unable to breathe.
I mean, maybe that's how. I assume real birds, if they traveled in boxes, would have holes. This one did not. But
right.
It did have a bunch of very real feathers. So
someone could have said you were a bad bird owner. No one ever said you were good at it.
Terrible bird owner. Absolutely appalling.
You were recently gifted a bottle of blackberry ink, right?
Oh yes. Yeah, no, my a friend of mine has taken up foraging blackberries and like making natural inks. So I think they're making iron gall ink next. So I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited to ruin all my pens with it.
Right. Yeah. How did it taste?
I don't know, but I assume it will taste of blackberries.
You didn't try it?
Vinegar. I'm afraid not, because it has like gum arabic. Oh, I suppose is gum arabic.
That sounds
edible?
delicious. It's got gum in it.
It's a thickener to make sure it's you can write with it, but it's got like it smells delicious. It smells like blackberries and vinegar.
I think the first thing I would.
And I think it has some cloves or star anise in it as well, just to keep it from rotting.
This sounds like a win-win. This sounds like a delicious smoothie.
I suppose.
I'm a little disappointed. That would have been step one.
I'm very sorry.
Thank you for the ink, and I would have tried some immediately. What other berries can you write with? Like, can I write with like a blueberry?
Presumably it probably has some pigment in it. I think the classic is iron gall, again very acidic. Which is
what is iron gall?
Iron gall is
showing my idiocy on this podcast.
It comes from oak trees. It's a kind of cancerous growth on oak trees.
Oh, that doesn't sound good. All right, I might be out on this.
It's the classic, like most medieval manuscripts that if you see it will be written in iron gall ink.
Okay.
It's like a very it's a medieval ink production method thing. Galls are they're like a parasitic cancerous growth thing
Oh, this
on
gets
oak trees.
worse.
They I mean, it's largely benign. Most trees have them, so you harvest them and you make that into ink. It's quite acidic. It's a problem because it's very, very slightly acidic. It eats through the manuscript leather, like the parchment, over time. So like I remember reading like there's this whole thing about like how they're having to de-acidify old manuscripts before it eats through completely.
What? That's crazy.
Well, it's just, I mean, people like, I mean, if you buy like fancy paper these days, they'll tell you, you know, this is acid-free paper. So preservation of like we still use acid and have acidic stuff in our stationery. It's just we don't think about it because we're not here. Like we don't think, oh yes, in 500, 600 years time, will this shitty notebook still be usable? Will I still be able to read my notes and remind me to go to the laundrette on Tuesday? And so
I don't have the smartest listeners here, so I just want to, you know, hedge this and say don't eat blueberry or blackberry or any kind of berry ink if you somehow come in, you know, if you somehow acquire some.
It's probably fine.
Don't do it. As someone who's chewed on pens his whole life as a nervous habit to deal with anxiety,
I'm sorry.
Plenty of them explode in his mouth. This sounded pleasant and I was excited, but I'm out on it. I'm out on it. Can you tell me how you do those book nails? Because I tried to do my own and it did not come out well. I did this. This was my nail.
Oh, that is some sparkles.
That was for the color purple.
I see what you did there. No, they're book nails. So
they're crazy.
It's called nail stamping, and it'll be a lot easier if this was a show and tell.
But you gotta check out our Instagram. They're incredible.
You have a metal plate, and it's laser etched with various designs. And what you do is you put nail polish on it, and then you scrape it so that the nail polish remains only in the grooves of the nail plate. So it's in the shape of the design. This is a process very similar to early printing. So if you've seen any etchings, for example, like copper etchings, like old newspapers have this. Like this is how they produce pictures. So you'd have like a metal plate and you'd etched into it. Now, obviously, etching is done with it's done with a solution, an acidic solution that eats into the metal, but it's the same basic principle. It's a metal plate, got grooves in it. You push in the ink, you remove the ink from everywhere that isn't the grooves, and then you press that plate against the surface that you want to imprint with the ink. Now, with nails, like so with newspapers or old etching art, and people still do this. Lino print still works like this, for example. Lino prints are really cool. Like you can buy lino prints on, let's say, Etsy or something. But you would press that on paper. For your nails, you would press it on a silicone stamper, which then you would transfer it onto the silicone, and then the silicone goes onto your nails. So if you think about like a picture, basically, it takes the image from the plate, which has kind of determined the design, and it just kind of transfers it onto your nails. It's very clever. But yeah, it's arguably a very old process. Obviously now, you know, it involves lasers and nail polish and stuff. But I back at school, I was very fortunate enough to be allowed to play with copper etching and that's yeah, so I can tell you it's very similar.
Do you
copper etching
any hobby?
Well, it like I can't do it anymore because I in no way have any of the equipment. But actually, no, I do have a book press. I could probably use the book press. But it's so you have a copper plate. You cover it in wax. Then you use a sharp tool to scratch off the wax in a design. This is exactly the same how, like, say, the people in the past would make etchings. And then, so you've got the design scratched into the wax. So then you cover up the back of the copper plate. You dunk the whole thing in acid. The acid eats into all the bits where the wax isn't. So the bits you've scratched off.
Okay.
And then you take it out, you remove the wax, and then you have the design etched into the metal. Now, nowadays, because we have lasers and computers, you could just etch straight into a metal with lasers. But same basic principle.
This is
it's
way
really
more
fun.
involved. This is way more involved than I thought. This is crazy.
But yes, back to the nails. So you put on a base color. Sometimes you do a gradient. So you use a sponge to sponge on multiple colors to create a gradient. Exactly the same as how you would do it on paper, but on your nail.
They're incredible.
And then you stamp on the designs. I think some people do draw on a lot of their nail art, and to be honest, that is way easier to explain, but way harder to do personally. Like people who just have a very tiny paintbrush and a bunch of paints and paint on a picture onto their nails with their hands. There isn't a lot to explain there, but so much harder. And I am always impressed by those people. But I am not anywhere near that competent. I just find lots of tiny pictures and apply them to my nails through overly convoluted processes. And then you cover it with like a glossy top coat to seal it in so it doesn't scratch off. Though I confess I have done book nails a lot less now I have a dog. I worry about he gets bored watching me do my nails. Not that she's not. Yeah.
I mean, listen, not everyone's going to have the capabilities to do this with their nail. And if they want to know that process, I took a highlighter and I drew on my nail with it. And that
I see. I mean, same basic, nail polish, highlighter, same thing.
Right, exactly. When you were a kid, you used to convince kids to go into a closet in PE class and you told them stories. How did you convince them to do this?
Where did you find this?
I interviewed some of your former classmates. No, I'm kidding.
Oh goodness, no, please don't. It was, I was very small. I was like 6. I have the haziest memory of this. I just remember I was reading, like, I think my parents had like a children's Bible, and like it was bought to me probably by my more religious aunts, and I was reading it every night, and then the next day I would just recount stories from it to.
So you were a prophet friends. Child.
I mean, like, thinking about it now, if continued, I have the feeling that maybe it would be the beginnings of a terrible cult. Because in the way of, like, I remember drawing like little pictures of Jesus to be my icon, and like it was all very sacrilegious, to be honest. And like, I had no real contact with formal religion. Like, I wasn't going to church or anything. I just had this one like children's Bible, and I was telling to other children like a ghost story. Like we would hide in the PE closet, like it, because it was atmospheric. You have I really don't remember this very well, except for the door of the closet, like of the sports utility closet, and the way it closed. And obviously, the janitor found us, and that put a stop to things. And
I wonder what the janitor thought. Like, what is going on in here?
Children having fun.
I'm just converting children.
And like, I was telling them like, you'd recount the plot of last night's soap opera, or like, what your parents read you for a bedtime story. So I don't want to. It's very easy to make the story sound very, very sinister and like I'm some kind of crazy proto-cult leader. I just want to reassure you that I'm not.
Do you think that there's any wayward kids out there that heard your stories that were like, I was on the path to destruction until I went into this closet and I came out a better person?
No, we were all 6. I don't remember. I don't remember any of, like, I genuinely have very little recollection of stuff around it.
This is
I'm sure my parents, would, like, if they were out, they could crash this conversation and go, none of this is real. Like, it's all Jeannette made, like, hallucinated this, and the truth of the story is so much more mundane. But
I mean,
obviously,
this is that'd be awesome. Delusions of grandeur. If you made that up, you're like, I was a prophet at the age of 6.
Yes.
I almost like it better if you did make it up. Speaking of your parents, did your dad really line edit everything you did? Like, if you wrote him a birthday card, he would like send it back, like line edited?
Yeah. I mean, that's my recollection of it.
Well, I remember like be some evidence of that somewhere.
I remember him line editing like my diary.
Oh my god, that's brutal.
But like, so like the start we would go on holiday, and my parents would make. Sorry, go on.
Like that's like if instead of like the hero learns how to fight from constantly getting like berated, you learned how to be a great writer from constantly having to be on edge.
Well, I was like 10 or something, like as a child, and like my parents would go on, like we'd go on holiday, and very well-meaningly they'd be like, oh, Jeannette, you should keep a diary so that you'll remember these wonderful holiday experiences when you grow up, which again, completely reasonable things to ask for a child. But my dad took it one step further, that they bought me this lovely little notebook that I'd keep as my diary, and then he'd obviously read what I wrote afterwards, and edit it and like correct any mistakes I made of grammar and stuff, because I was like 10. So yeah, that is it sounds a little bit silly now I mention it, but like that was just normal. I didn't really keep a diary outside of holidays.
Okay.
So it wasn't like all my deepest, darkest teenage thoughts, like, oh my god, I have a crush on Blurg type stuff.
Blurg was a good looking person.
Blurg was the hottest. But yeah,
the modern version of that is like like a dad editing their child's Instagram post.
But Twitter doesn't have an edit button. But yeah, like I did, like he would I did find, like last year I was just going through old stuff and found like essays and stuff, I like kind of stories, essays, like quasi. I got stuck in the elevator, quirky story, like not quirky stories because it actually happened. I was stuck in the elevator and I wrote like a little thing about it. And like my dad, it was full of my dad's line edits. Like, oh my Jeannette, god, you can't spell diary to save your life.
So this is hysterical.
I don't think it made me a better writer.
No, I mean, it certainly probably made you think about it a little more. That is so funny. I could just see him line editing, like if a teacher sends you back a paper, or line editing the line edits.
Not all Asian dads are terrifying and perfectionist. Not all. Like I have a very easygoing, very lovely uncle, for example, who has kids, though he's probably also terrifying to his kids because that's how uncles work.
I love how you shifted that right away from your parent. You're like, but my uncle is nice.
My uncle's really lovely, super easygoing. Actually, no, my dad's really easygoing to his nephews. Like, he's the fun one to
right. It's all about perspective.
It's all about perspective, yeah. But like, my point is that, well, it's obviously there's a stereotype, and I'm very sad my dad lives up to it sometimes, but he doesn't.
Just in this one area. I don't presume to know how the rest of this went, but that is funny.
Like, he does have
good nature though.
Like I remember my mom used to tell me he outraged all her friends because like he abruptly told them that he didn't expect any future daughter of his to like be a virgin when she was married.
Oh my
and
God,
they're all deeply
scandalous.
scandalous. I don't actually have the rest of that anecdote. Like my mom just abruptly told me that one day.
That's the whole story.
But yeah, I think my dad is very supportive and liberal in many ways, just not in all ways.
Thank you for including that footnote. I am not saying anything other. I just thought that was a funny story. Let's get on to these book questions. Are you ready to talk about the book? That's why you are here today.
I can talk about the book.
You don't sound too thrilled about it, but maybe.
I wrote it a long time ago. I'm very prepared for you to tell me stuff like, on page 5 this happened, and I'm like, really? Did it?
You are over assuming my ability to take notes on books. That I would ever know the page number. Has telling someone not to read something ever prevented something from being read? No. All right.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, just maybe it was really boring.
I mean, yeah, I guess that would be the only thing that would be prevented. That should have been the lead question. It's really boring. Don't read it.
Oh. Connection issues.
I know. I lost you for a second.
You're back.
Ta-da.
It used to be an old joke in my family that so you'd be at like a meal or something, and then someone would eat a thing and then immediately go, oh my God, this tastes terrible. No one should eat it. I will sacrifice myself and eat it all myself, but none of you should eat it. Save yourselves because it's so terrible. And this would be like a running thing.
I mean, that would work though.
There'll be double bluffs that do it sometimes, and it actually tastes terrible, and everyone would like immediately be interested in the food, and then they'd be like, no, actually it's terrible, and you're all being suckered into eating it because because person was telling the truth for a change. So like, this kind of ridiculous reverse psychology, don't open the box, is very familiar to me.
So
family meals are very exciting.
I was gonna say your dinner sounds awesome. This might be the worst question I've ever come up with, but did anyone who visited Arcadia be upset that it wasn't an arcade?
I don't know. But I'm sure there are plenty of arcades in the sense of long corridors to wander in Arcadia. So there's that. I mean, you could equally ask why it isn't in Greece.
I can't believe you're giving this question any sort of legs.
I mean, Arcadia as a name is an interesting one because of like, because of that history of being an actual place in Greece, but then being eulogized as this utopic other world by Greek writers and subsequent other writers, and that transformation of Arcadia from a real place to a almost mythical place in the romantic imagination is a really interesting one. And it happens to all sorts of places, like Mount Olympus is a real place and also a mythical place. There are plenty of places in arguably in all over the world that has that, where people talk about a real place and suddenly it becomes a mythical one, like and all the places in the Bible did that as well. Like Gehenna is a trash heap and a burial ground outside of one of the cities, and it also is the name for hell because of that association of being a burial ground for paupers, for unwanted people, and being a trash heap. So I don't know where I'm going with any of this, just place names and
right. Not an arcade. That's what I gathered.
Yeah, not a video game arcade, sadly. That would be a very different book.
You know what?
But like the really should have that term of where that came from is wildly interesting.
Yeah,
Like why video games are called arcades, as in. Anyway, different time. Let's talk about something else. Literally anything else.
Okay, I'm getting
Before this
older.
becomes etymology 101.
Listen, I could use it because I clearly don't know anything. If I'm asking questions like that, I need the etymology 101. I'm getting older, and this is a concern of mine. And this was the first thing I thought of when they were in Arcadia. Are you concerned about people having high blood pressure in Arcadia? They got salt to everything. It's terrible for you.
Clearly, it's a ploy by the fairies to do you in by heart attacks before they do you in with mental madness.
This is all I thought. I thought these poor people's blood pressure.
Yeah,
it's got to be through the roof.
Pretty bad. It is appalling.
I'm not an expert in childcare, though I think I'm an expert in everything, but I'm pretty sure not this. Was Tessie a good nanny? Because I don't know if dangling scissors over an open cradle is a good idea. It might, if you're lacking a toy, I don't know what the spinny toy that goes above, I guess that would serve in a pinch, but it seems like playing with fire.
It's a real thing though. Open scissors being
over a cradle?
Yeah, like you would hang it over or like attach it. Like open scissors, like making the sign of the cross as a way to ward off fairies is a real thing. It's based on a real thing. I didn't make that up. Like I'm really bad at making shit up, like just in general. So if you read something in my books and you're like, oh, that sounds really cool, it'd be like, yeah, no, Jeannette didn't make that up. She probably found it somewhere and cannibalized it in the worst possible way. So yeah, that whole thing, Sheffield does actually make scissors and cutlery, very famous for cutlery. Sheffield's, it wasn't a Doctor Who episode. Don't underestimate Sheffield steel or something like that. So yeah, that's like, yeah, I'm very bad at making things up. A lot of the folk tradition, with salt, for example, like its associations with warding off fairies, like people pinching salt to like throw over the shoulder because witches. It's based on real things. People did have some quite interesting things in the past. People did a lot of really interesting things in the past. We still do interesting things. I was noticing, like, there's a little thing I do where I tap the top of like cans before I open it. It's almost reflexive now, and no one else I knew in the UK did it. And I met an acquaintance from Hong Kong, and I saw them do the same thing as me, and I was like, oh, I do that, and I can't tell you why, but I feel like it's probably superstitious.
Okay,
but it's like this weird little tappy thing I do with my fingers over the top of it. Anyway, it's yeah, like if you told me that was to ward off demons, I'd believe you.
Hey, has a demon gotten you yet?
I definitely haven't, and like,
so it's starting to work. Must be something
to
it.
Yeah.
I could just picture like you're in a courthouse and they're like, your child was impaled by a scissor. What happened? You're like, I was warding off spirits.
Well, infant mortality used to be very high, so people did all sorts of things.
So that was just like whatever. Like,
course,
you gave it your best shot. You gave it the whole college try.
It's fine. But yeah, actually, like with children, I realized a really odd thing about me and babies. Because a friend of mine, they had a child, and they kept referring to the child like a baby as their actual name, like their actual name, like, I don't know, Lydia or something. I don't want to actually, reveal their child's name, but like, and it was very weird. I just couldn't get over, like, no, that's a newborn baby. They're not allowed names yet. You can't call it by a person grown-up name. And I realized I had just this really, really strong taboo in me that it felt fundamentally wrong. Like you had to call it like by a like a cutesy nickname.
Right.
So we started calling it the pork. Like I started calling it like the porg or the potato. Like it wasn't. It's not. And looking at it like from like a folklorist, anthropologist, literary point of view, I think it comes from like an old kind of like an East Asian Chinese tradition of you don't babies have milk names. So a milk name is a name that you give a child when they're very young, when they're just born, and it's not like the real name. It's like a nickname that's to ward off spirits. It's meant to be slightly demeaning. It's meant to like make evil spirits go, oh, this one's trash, we don't want it, you can keep it, humans. So it's meant to be like you're meant to name your child something like snot face or like
I thought you meant like 2% skim milk oak.
It's very common. Like it's not just like a
I think I've even heard of this.
Like I think it persists in like it shows up in like some fantasy settings. I think it's like in How to Train Your Dragon, for example, like Snotlout is a character. So like the idea of naming your child something undesirable, but obviously milk names as an idea is very like milk as in this is the name you have whilst you're still on your mother's milk.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's like a name for when you're young. And so I kind of realized that I just had this very strong taboo that it wasn't allowed a grown-up name yet. And so I just he's the child's 2 now, so they're allowed a grown-up, like a real human name, so I'm willing to acknowledge that they have like a real name. But for a while it was just like, oh yes, how is the potato doing? I'm glad your potato is getting bigger.
Well, I mean, depending on how hungry you are, I would want the potato to be bigger too.
Is the potato still making alarming pterodactyl noises?
There's where I'd lose you. There I'd be like, I don't know what's going on. All right, I've gone long enough in this interview without asking it. Why do they have to bang? Why? Why?
It's gothic. it's gothic. That's it. It's the gothic thing. Everyone's seen Crimson Peak. It's the culmination of all those forbidden gothic desires that they've been feeling, and that's just how it rolls. They go to Arcadia, they realize of all the terrible things that they shouldn't be doing. Mab laughs, the end. Terrible plan achieved. The veil of comfortable modesty and like the constraints of society have fallen away, and everyone goes, no.
Does everyone hear this eloquent answer for a brother and sister banging?
It's meant to be, you're meant that is the correct response. You're meant to go now. Like otherwise it wouldn't be gothic horror.
My notes were getting more and more dreadful for this as I was going on. I was like, did they bang? Are they in love? What the fuck is going on? And then all of a sudden I was like, no. Why was she so turned on by murdering her friend? And the first thing she thought was, now's the time to do this. Or I guess once that barrier
that is the trajectory. That is the dark descent of a gothic heroine who is not good things are happening in this book.
If we had more time, I'd debate what is morally more evil, banging your brother or murdering your friends. But
I mean, they have this conversation too in the book, I believe. I believe she has the fancying you is just not really the moral event horizon anymore after I've murdered my friends. So they do have that conversation.
Yeah, but they were trying to rationalize
nothing matters anymore.
Right, I guess. But
like, they were also trying to justify doing a thing that they really wanted to do, but probably shouldn't.
Whatever.
As is the rest of the setting and the moral argument of the story, I suppose. They're not good. Are they good people? I don't know if they're good people. They don't make good decisions.
I mean, at least in that area. Hey, you know what? If they had fun, whatever. Who am I to judge? I am judging, but who am I to judge?
I believe the point of the book is some form of judgment, but yes.
That's what makes it fun.
I think it's like it's like asking why. I think I wanted to open the weird gothic box. I do think that there are people who want to write gothic horror without the creepy sex shit, but I believe it is baked into the genre.
Well, you know what? You wanted to write what you wanted to write, and let me tell you, that wasn't mine.
Many times I have thought maybe I should have written a different book, but that didn't happen.
Well, it's a little late now, let me tell you. Is the reason figs taste like shit because Jesus never forgave the fig tree?
I assume so. Yeah, it's full of corpses of dead wasps.
All right. What is the coolest thing I could get at the Goblin market? Self-confidence?
Probably, just ice. That's probably pretty cool.
That's pretty sweet.
Some some quality cold weather. That's pretty cool. I assume that's what they did.
Better jumping? Like, I want to jump really high. I'm on record saying this. This is my dream.
I'm sure that is something that you can buy at the Goblin market.
What about my parents' love?
Possibly in a bottle? I think I was trying to remember someone who was writing a PhD about Goblin markets and the nature of exchange in them. And I think what really fascinated him was how a lot of, I wish I could remember his name now, like a lot of stories, including mine, which feature Goblin markets, don't actually do the commerce. Like the threat, like the commerce is always like the threat. Like there are these people selling things and all these people buying things, and it's all, but the protagonist is often saved from engaging in this mystical, magical commerce for reasons, and they don't make the deal. And I was thinking about it, going, yeah, you're right. Like, there's Goblin Market. There's one in like Hellboy. There's one in Goblin Market, trope namer, Christina Rossi's poem. But like a lot of times the plot seems to be, oh yes, we have to save the protagonist from commerce. We don't actually do the commerce with these supernatural forces. What's up with that? And they had a really good point. And they had like kind of tying into like kind of these ideas of capitalist exchange and what the Goblin market signified. And yeah, I wish I could just read this book like this person wrote, because they did a really good talk.
Maybe the Goblin markets need to have more sales, like a Black Friday deal.
Like, maybe everything is just a little bit too expensive. Actually, yeah. Talking of sales, so I run live roleplay games. And one of the really interesting things about live roleplay games, like, so you might send in like demons or whatever to make deals with player characters. And it's really hard to get to talk a player character into selling you their soul. Basically, it never happens. Like, they just don't want to sell you their soul for some reason. So a while back, we were trying to write this game where we wanted like making deals with demons to be like a thing that characters did more. So we thought, okay, people won't sell their whole soul. So what if we gave everyone these soul cards, like we split people's souls up into multiple parts. It sounds really stupid, but basically, like, it's a game, okay? Like, characters would have multiple parts of their soul. I think and each part would be given a name, like compassion or like narcissism or whatever, like that kind of thing. Greed, wrath,
okay,
hope. And you get to pick your one. So you get to pick 5, I think, from a list of 20 or something. And basically you were set, so people could sell bits of their soul. So you and towards the end, just the kind of incremental selling, people sold quite a bit of their souls. Like, you know, people got down to like 1 or 2 bits of soul by the end. So
I mean, all you'd have to do
I was
is,
very
like,
proud. But it was, I thought it says a lot about kind of how players work, at least in that way, where just saying, oh yes, sell me your entire soul in one go was just, you just cannot talk a player into doing that. But like bits, just, you know, little bits, it's you won't miss it. You won't miss your sense of compassion.
So
You won't miss it.
you learned how to trick people into selling pieces of their soul.
It was really fun. It was a great game. Like it was, and it had like, because there was no mechanics around how, oh, if you sold your sense of wrath, you'll never be angry again. Like there was no mandatory thing about that. These were just bits on a piece of paper. Like there was no rules about how you had to role play at all. It was just, this is what you've done, and people would role play accordingly, like how they feel that would make them feel. It was very fuzzy, but it was good. We made people feel many emotions. Most of those emotions were not positive, which is the point of role play games.
To not have positive emotions. Sounds fun. I've got 2 more things for you. One thing I do on this show is I always pitch novella ideas, and they are terrible and no one has ever accepted them. But here we go. I've got a good one for you. The Gospel According to Mr. Benjamin. Find out one person's battling with their own moral quandaries, like, should one eat figs? Why do people care about the holy cuckold? Am I stony ground? And we follow the musing of one of these creatures trying to navigate the hilarious path to salvation.
So I obviously have never actually written this, but I did think it might be fun to write the like the kind of the reverse, the changeling convert showing up in Victorian England story, which if I ever do, I will include the Gospel According to Mr. Benjamin as part of their holy texts.
There you go. I finally made it. Shout out to my dad. He'll finally say you did something useful.
I'm very bad at writing anything these days, but if I ever write it, I will include this very exciting. I do love Mr. Benjamin. He is the best thing about that book.
Oh, he is amazing. All-time character. Okay. And then I think my last question. Did anyone ever consider that Roche was just a drug addict and he shouldn't be trusted? Like, he's taking 80 grains, and I don't know how much a grain is, but it's certainly more than nothing, of mercury and, you know, like opium for like a fever. The guy is just a drug addict. Like, why are we listening to anything this dude is saying?
Well, I think that is like a running theme, that how trustworthy is Roche's observations, how crazy and or not crazy is Miss Clay. What's her name? Bertha Clay? Bertha Clay. Is that her name? Betha?
I think oh man,
I
have it written somewhere. There we
go.
So
awkward when you remember your characters' names. But yeah, like the like Mrs. Roche, like they are,
there you go,
intentionally meant to be kind of like, I think I wanted people to be questioning that. So it is correct to wonder that and ask that question. And yes, probably, maybe. Like, or even if Miss Davenport is human, like I think that's one of the things that that really haunted. Like, I think obviously the easiest way to read it is obviously she is a changeling, she is a fairy construct, and she does say a few things that sound like, well, you know, she says she doesn't need food, she just feels hungry, and it's like, okay, yep, you're saying that, but like humans can go quite a while without food,
3 weeks.
without dying. I mean, they do need to eat, but like she says she feels hungry, so maybe she just went a week without food and thought, oh yes, this proves I'm a changeling. So that's like a lot of the things she says about herself. And like, you know, Kathy goes through this. Like that's kind of the things that I really like about Kathy's arc, where she kind of questions if she's a person. And she's like, oh yes, I can't remember my childhood properly. That means I must be a changeling. And it's like,
yeah, she was very good at like
darling, humans in general are very bad at remembering their childhood. And darling, disassociation is a thing everyone does. And so she's kind of associating these very human, like fundamental human psychological things as, oh no, this must mean I mean a changeling. And I think, like, even like, you know, lactose intolerance, she's like, oh yes, is this kind of thing of like, oh yes, lactose intolerant are clearly changelings. And it's like, no, lactose intolerance is a real thing that humans have. So like, to me, that game of like who is actually human, is Ms. Davenport human, is intentionally open. The symptoms are intentionally meant to be, wait, don't real people do that too?
Right.
And what that kind of means. And I think it's very open. Like it's not a good book for answers. I think you can come away with a very strong sense of this happened, this guy's just insane, like very kind of a checklist of like, this is the truth. But you could do that to any book. Like, right, you could feel certain about any book. But I ideally, like, my way of thinking about it is like, oh well, you know, I like ambiguous, open, imagine your own ending type nonsense. Right. And this totally isn't because I'm very lazy and I don't want to write an ending.
What I learned was, if you don't want to feel guilty about incest, murder someone first.
Yes, it's all relative. I think that is I think judging by your Bannisters, you're also very aware the Lannisters have a very similar strategy.
Yeah, I am Team Lannister, and that was exactly what I was thinking. It is kind of it kind of does fit the theme to have that banner right over my bald head, reflected, the sun reflecting right into the Lion of Lannister.
I have no words.
There you go. Thank you for not insulting me further. I'll do it myself. I think that's everything I got. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on a Twitter hiatus, but I am on Twitter as Jeannette_Ng. That's spelled NG. And I sometimes write. I write reviews, anime reviews these days, like manga reviews. I
saw that. For very good.
Some kind of blog. Yeah, it pays. But yeah,
where is that blog? You want to shout that out?
Oh god, it's anime something. I don't know. Don't ask me. I did review Violet Evergarden, which I love. I got to do that. I got to write about my favorite anime from money, so that was great.
That's the dream.
Yeah, that is the dream. It's embarrassingly search for it now. I think it's called Anime Now or something. God, don't edit. You're gonna edit this, or please tell me you're gonna.
I'm gonna keep this whole thing. This is great.
No one cares. All the anime, yes.
There you go.
I got to write about Violet Evergarden for All the Anime from money, and that was great because everyone wants to write about their favorite anime. But yeah, that's my most recent thing I've been doing. That's publicly viewable. Obviously, I still have my novel. It's out in audiobook. It's out on Kindle. It's out on physical copies. And everyone could read about weird theology and incest.
And that is the best selling point I've ever heard. Thank you so much for taking the time out for this. Some people I talk to and I know why they are successful authors and I'm not. So she just had so much knowledge about so many different things. Absolutely incredible. And that interview was so much fun. It took a really long time to put that together, so I was really excited to get that out for everybody. Let's talk about books on the horizon, because the fun don't stop till I walk in. Don't stop. I'm like Kesha. Next week is going to be Children by Jordan Larson, and if you thought I've had wild interviews, then you haven't heard that one yet. And then I'm joined by the electric Irish magnet himself, Ryan Cahill, to talk about his book Of Blood and Fire. And then after that, I am not entirely positive, but I think it's going to be We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle. Thanks everybody for rocking with me. Keep on reading or something. Peace.